If you like bikes, you're going to love this video because you'll have the privilege of joining me as we enter the BMC headquarters in Switzerland. I don't know if we're going to see a lot of prototypes, maybe some 32-inch ones, maybe some new stuff. Aero, they're going to show us in a moment, but what I'm sure of is that we're going to see some real beasts in here. Because BMC takes that saying to the extreme, do just one thing, but do it very well. They're all about performance. They only know how to make racing machines. And as soon as you walk in, look, because it's already clear what this is all about. Check out the bikes we have. The winning SLR from the 2011 Tour de Cadel Evans. Here we have the European champion bike. This is Van Avermaet's Olympic Games commemorative bike. Here we also have the Paris-Roubaix champion bike. Van Avermaet and Jordan Sarru, world champion in mountain bike cross country. That's the introduction. What we need now is to come back and be amazed. It seems they have 3 surprises for us here. I don't know if by the time I publish this video I'll be allowed to show them, but if not, you'll see them later on this channel or on other social media like Instagram and so on. But hey, just look at these beauties. Little things. I don't think I've ever seen so many BMCs together before. Wow, the whole Team Machine range, the R, the Aero, and the SLR, the most versatile one. Awesome? Wow. What colors? I love it. Well, it keeps going over here, huh? Look, we have some standalone frames. This is getting exciting. I love it. I love it. I had seen it in a photo, but now that I see it in person, it's amazing. And this one, what do you think? Wow. Oh. Can't wait to see it. Look, another one that's covered over there. I hope they'll let me show them in this video. Fortunately, I will be able to show you 2 of the models that were ready. I've already shared some on my social media channels, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, where you can follow me for more details. But I want to convey to you the idea that we spent this first day in the office building. And the important part, the really good stuff, what we like, what bike enthusiasts love, comes a little later in the video, where they take us straight into the laboratory, the Impact Lab at BMC, where they develop all their bikes. But anyway, here you have the meetings we held to, for example, get to know the Team Machine 01, which is a new model that was about to be released on the market. Here we also had a very interesting meeting with the CEO. I'll publish the full meeting later, where they explain the future of the brand, how they approach it on an organizational level, and more. And this one, another of the new models that has hit the market, the new 2-stroke, the hardtail par excellence, where beyond how beautiful it is aesthetically speaking, it was very interesting to be able to see firsthand how all its development was done. The man behind it, the engineer behind its entire development. All this is information that, as I said, I will be sharing not only here on YouTube, but also on the rest of my social networks, because the truth is that it's rare for a brand to open up so much and share so much of its knowledge with the general public, and I think that's extremely valuable. Well, here from meeting to meeting, I think the last one we had was directly to learn the latest details about the new Team Machine, the ER, the Road Climber, and now comes the big stuff, the important part. Here we are in Grupera through the Swiss mountains. It's interesting because right now we're testing one of the upcoming bikes from the BMC catalog. One of the few products that aren't dedicated or designed for performance for certain reasons that you'll see at the launch. But the thing is, even this product that's not designed for performance has a hint of performance, of racing, of speed, which is incredible. Thank you. BMC was born this way with that DNA, and it's stayed that way since '94, and that's why you won't see kids' bikes, you won't see urban bikes, you won't see, I don't know, those kinds of things that other brands have in their catalogs. This strategy is very risky because nowadays you're limiting yourself to the performance niche, and with the current market turbulence, closing yourself off to such a small niche. It can mean that you don't end up making all the revenue you should each year to maintain your whole structure. Or could it simply mean that you don't have enough flexibility to adapt to the times as a company? But it's really good that there are brands that stick to their philosophy, that don't betray their DNA, and that keep making machines as powerful as this one.
A good one, actually. We are here is standing in the building that we acquired when we did the Swiss production of a product that was called ImpeC. So that was the ambition from Andy Rees, our former owner, to have automated frame production. And when I joined the company in 2006, this project was in full swing in the planning stage. And the initiation of this project was actually by Andy Rees. Our owner was so disappointed about the quality we got from Asia that he said, I want to do this differently. I want to not rely on human labor, people who make mistakes. I want to make a bike frame with machines. And so the project was running from probably 2005 to 2014. The last 3 years we were in production with this product. But actually, looking back now, I can say that the fact that we wanted to produce this frame by machines had so much constraints that we ended up with a product that was not very competitive in terms of performance values. It was nice to ride, yes, but it was too heavy, it was too expensive. We stopped the production in 2014 because it was simply too expensive to produce this frame, even with all the automatization involved. And this product was called ImpeC. And when we stopped the impact manufacturing project in 2014, we transferred a lot of the equipment. And of course, we also had gained a lot of know-how, because making a product, producing a product is a whole different game. So we transferred a lot of equipment into what we now call Impact Lab. So if you visit today, you'll see CNC machines, you'll see other machinery. A lot of that is from the period when we had manufacturing here. We are now a team of 9 people who do the product development. This is split into 4 people in the Impact Lab, which is basically where we do pre-development and innovation. And then we have 5 people who are working on the commercial development. Commercial development means once we know exactly what we want to do, what the features of a bike are, how we want to do them. Does that mean that whenever someone has a product related idea they want to try out, that we can help move that idea forward up to the point where we can say whether it was a good idea or a bad idea? Which means often you want to go a certain way. You have to do a prototype, ideally a prototype that you can ride outside, whether it's on the road or on a tri or on a trail. And it is not easy to do this because, especially me, 20 years in this environment, we have tried so many things. And when someone comes to me with a new idea, often my first reaction is, if this was a good idea, we would have done it already 10 years ago. And I have to push myself to be very open for any idea, because not only the environment is changing, but also production methods are changing, materials are changing. So we want to facilitate the prototype making and validation of ideas. And when I say facilitate, it means we want to be fast. Typically, we can go from an idea to a prototype within less than a month. And in order to do that, we have some dedicated equipment. Back there, you can see a CNC machine where, for instance, the parts that you see here were manufactured. Why do we have our own CNC machine? It's very simple. If you have to take your design idea to an outside supplier, typically it either takes a long time because there's no free capacity, or you have to send the file to someone. And in this file, there might already be intellectual property. So outsourcing is definitely never faster. That's why we have our own CNC machine. And also behind you, we have our own carbon layup room where we can make carbon prototypes. whether we do something in CNC or in carbon, this really depends on what we want to validate. We want to be fast, so typically we choose the faster method. But for some things we want to validate, we have to do it in a certain material. That's why we have the two methods. Often also we combine the two, and out of those we make some prototypes. So it's important for us to have many ideas tested and come to a quick decision. This idea has potential or not. To give you an idea, out of 10 things we try, is probably 2 that make it to the next step. Maybe 2 out of 10. That doesn't mean that the other 8 are completely useless, because you always learn something. And sometimes you can actually go back 2 years later to something that you have already done, recombine.
Yeah.
Just to give you some examples to show a bit how wide the field of ideas is. So this, as far as I can remember, was once a battery holder for the i2 battery to go into the head tube. This, I don't think I have to explain. You understand. That was a shifter for a dropper seat post. This, I don't know. Obviously dropout for a mountain bike prototype. This piece here looks alien-like. This sits here on top in this structure. That was for a cockpit. This was an early prototype of the cable adjustment of the Time Machine 2nd generation, where we had this brake force ratio converter. This here, very interesting, something from a stem. I need to think. Probably, oh no, actually this is a leaf spring in here. So I think it was kind of a suspension stem. This is very old stuff. Probably one more. Some of you know the Canyon Care system for mountain bikes. We have tried similar things with different pulleys so the force can change. We also build prototypes so we can actually measure how much you steer. There's also some solution with damping in the steering. This is all exploration, but it shows a bit how wide the scope goes. That's an interesting one. Or probably, in mountain biking, we have on the 4-stroke a dropper seat post that you can lower with the lever, so you don't have to do a squat. This idea is very old. It goes back probably 10 years, and the first prototype for that was actually with a motor. We quickly realized that the energy consumption for the speed to go up and down is way too big. You almost need the e-bike battery. And then out of that, the idea grew to use air, pneumatic air, as energy. And to validate if we can actually have an air tank in the down tube that you can inflate up to 12 bar. This was the first prototype we made just for a pressure tank. So today, the 4-stroke one, all the bikes have a pressure tank in the down tube that can be inflated up to 12 bar, and it has to be safe, even on a plane and everywhere. So quite a bit of work to be done. You have been presented with our mountain bike cockpit that we developed together with the racing team, not only to have the right shape, but also to have the right amount of flex. And the first prototypes for that, before we went into mass production, were actually made in the ImpeC lab. Not only those parts, but also the molds for the carbon pieces we manufactured on this machine. Once we knew and we were confident about the layup we needed that we could achieve our targets, we went one step further. We went to the carbon supplier and told them what we wanted. For us, it's a big advantage if we have something already manufactured with a certain performance to go to the supplier and convince them that this is what you can do. For instance, the micro travel technology we had on the mountain bikes, but also some e-bikes. I would say, yeah, exactly. Merci, Antoine. Without making first prototypes here, I would say every supplier would have said, we cannot do that. This is impossible to manufacture. It doesn't work. It's challenging. But going there with a prototype, this feature, and showing them actually we can do it, so you can do it. This helps a lot also then to speed up the commercial development. Then here you can see exploring handlebar shapes. This is a very, very traditional shape from the 70s. Sometimes you have to do things like that. There are still riders who like this a lot. We have one in the two-door team. You can guess who it is. So we first validate the shape with a metal 3D print, and then as it's a small-scale project, we actually do molds for the carbon also in 3D prints. And out of that, we can manufacture a small number of pieces. So we are not only pushing, let's say, product solutions, we are also always pushing manufacturing and all those things. No, the 3D printer is not in-house, but it's in Switzerland. I was actually quite surprised we can do this in Switzerland for a competitive price. I mean, logically, you would say it's a machine, so it should be the same price. But for instance, for CNC, we know if we ask for a part in CNC here in Switzerland, or in, let's call it China, in China, it's a quarter of the price. Don't ask me how this is possible. It's also a machine, but whenever possible, we prefer to do things here also for IP reasons.
Take a good look at this room because it really reminds me of Tony Stark's office from Iron Man. Because look, the wall they have there with all the design references they have for the future. Bicycles, cars, animals, natural structures, plants, architecture, motorcycles, everything. So they take all of this in, or rather it comes out of their heads onto this panel, and that's where they start creating a bit. The idea of how the bicycle's aesthetics should be, beyond everything we've already seen, structurally, aerodynamically, and so on. And then they have this huge table here where I imagine they let their imagination run wild, make the plans, and so on. But the laboratory they have in here is incredible because really... Sometimes we think, well, all the bikes come from China, all the bikes come from Asia, so what does it matter if it's one brand or another, right? Here, BMC is opening up, showing us that they really have their own in-house development in their own factory. Well, in fact, they have this separate building dedicated solely and exclusively to development. And really, not many brands can do this. It's crazy, the level of perfection, the level of freedom that the engineers have in this company. Think about the fact that in bike brands, there's usually a triangle: commercial side, marketing side, and product side. Not every brand has the product side in charge. In many others, the engineers get orders directly from marketing or sales to create a certain type of bike. Here, they've given them an amusement park for engineers. They've provided everything necessary so they can let their imagination run wild and invent things. And they've already told us that only 2 out of every 10 move forward for different reasons, or they're kept on ice for later when they might have an application or something like that. But the simple fact that they have the freedom and the space to be able to develop all of this, To the point that their own prototypes, many of them made of carbon, are created here, as you can see. Wow! Incredible. Truly incredible. I'm almost speechless.
When you see a frame like this, or that whole rack over there, the graveyard, as we call it, they're all similar products like that. It's all, let's say, existing frames cut and remade. Typically, we use this table here to rebond or reconnect the pieces. It is not much different than how frames were made when they were welded. You have jigs, for instance. Here you can take the BB, there's a counterpart, or you have the one for the axle. And then on the heavy flat plate, you put your plan of the bike, you put everything in place, you glue it together, and after gluing, you also have to wrap some of the joints. Like here, there is a second wrap of carbon. Sometimes, for instance, here we are confident the gluing surface is big enough, we don't have to rewrap. We have a lot of experience doing this, so I should not say it's easy, but we know what we need. What are we doing here? In essence, we do 3 different kinds of tests. The first one is all tests related to performance. That can be as easy as taking a scale and weighing something. I mean, we know weight is performance. Then we talk about stiffness. We have here a stiffness table. I will explain later. We also have a lot of equipment to measure the precision of the bikes. All 3 of those things relate to performance. Then the biggest part, and probably the one that is the most visible, is structural testing. So we have rules nowadays. It's ISO that requires us to have products that pass certain tests. And we have our own protocol, which is a combination of the ISO tests plus some specific tests. For instance, here on the wall, you can see all the different tests that are done, and it is quite easy. They are described, and you can see there's a mix. Some of them are really... Actually, this is all BMC specific tests. We didn't just use the ISO tests you have here on the machines. You can see what the ISO requires. But for many areas, we have developed our own tests that either have to be done because we have specific design solutions or because we want to go beyond. For instance, here you see a test that is to check how securely the hoods are holding onto the bar. ISO has no test for that. But we realized very quickly that with different lever shapes and different bar shapes, it's important that we test that. And the way we do that is by clamping the hoods on the bar. Then we load the hoods with weights and increase the drop height. And then we let the whole setup drop and measure at which height the hoods start to slip. And like that, we can quantify how secure this is. ISO doesn't say anything about that. Another test that I could pick, probably this one for full suspension, is where we can measure the rear compliance curve. It's obviously not a structural test, but it's a performance test, so it's a whole set of tests. And then the way it works, the project engineer, he has a list of tests that he can pick, and he has to decide in which stage of the project he is wanting to do which tests. So for instance, here you can see the engineer, he picked this sequence of tests that have to be done, and then he can give the material and plaster sheet to Niels. And Niels is unbiased. He's really just doing the test according to the standard. He's delivering a result, and then the engineer is discussing this with Niels, and we see, of course, by saying that, it's also clear that it's somehow the engineer who has to decide in which phase of the project he wants to do which tests. For instance, when you develop a frame, there are phases where you don't want to do all the tests because you know already up front which one is the critical one. So you start with the critical one, and once this is done, you want to do all the others. But it's also clear that if we take, for instance, a road fork, it is very clear when we close the development, it's like 12 different tests that have to be completed. And our ambition is always to have all those tests completed with one frame or one fork or one handlebar. According to ISO, you could take a new frame for every one of those tests. So already by that, I think we go way beyond what is needed. It's not just because we want to prove that we can go beyond, it's also a cost thing in the end. If you want to have a frame size passed, and you need 12 frames to do that, or if you need one, this is a very different game.
Sorry, I'm surprised that this room is so quiet. I've been in similar rooms in nature, and it would be impossible to speak with you at this voice level.
We upgraded the machines 2 years ago to electronic drive, which helps us to be faster and quieter. Our suppliers in Asia also have the loud version, which does the same thing. So it's a matter of how the load is done. These electronic cylinders,
It's easy to move.
it's also for Niels who has to work here.
Good for his ears.
If you have to work in a lab like this, it's loud, it's not convenient.
Good. Swiss style also here? Wow. Amazing, right? I understand that for some of you it might be hard to fully appreciate what you're seeing because you don't have to be in a bike factory every day, but since I've been lucky enough to visit quite a few, I can tell you that this is not the norm. An entire building, a massive investment dedicated so that just 5 people, 5 engineers can play at being the gods of bicycles. To innovate, to develop, to brainstorm, with such a high percentage of inventions, so much research, investment, and money that the company has put in there, that in the end doesn't make it to the market and doesn't have an economic return. They've told us it's 80%. Any company, first, wouldn't bet on this, and second, couldn't afford it. And for me, this is a clear sign of the philosophy, the DNA of BMC, which is very well defined, and personally, it leads me to 2 conclusions with a small design. I want to make it very clear. I don't have to defend any company, any brand, any country, or any industry. But it's impossible not to see all of that, all that meticulous way of working, so specific, so detail-oriented, and not draw some conclusions. The first has to do with some criticism that BMC sometimes gets when I review one of their bikes, like, well, it's not affordable, it has a very high price. Well, they're premium bikes. Here is where you really understand why. You get it when you get on one of them because of the feeling, because of the unique performance they give you, but also because of all the development behind them, which in the end, one thing leads to another. And secondly, the thought I'd like to share has to do with that perception I sometimes get when I also review Chinese products, because you know I'm independent and I cover all kinds of content, all kinds of products. Sometimes lately it feels like since our perception of China has changed, it's not just that they can make cheap, low-quality things, but they're also able to raise their level of technology, development, and release products that are competitively priced with technology that in many cases is okay or even very good. So the only thing I want to say here is don't count out the Western industry, don't count out the European industry. It still has a lot to say, and the Chinese still have a long way to go to catch up with many of the things that have been manufactured here for decades. You'll see it later in another video that I'll probably publish, but for example, in aerodynamic terms, the things they showed us and the things they explained to us, At least from what I've seen in China, being in China, and from the products that come from China, there's no comparison. Why? Because the Chinese, among other things, are looking for economic efficiency, that direct massive economic return from the moment they start manufacturing something. And at least at BMC, they have a different way of doing things. And they are capable of carrying out projects that they know won't be profitable for the company economically, but that will take them to another level of development and to a higher level of brand prestige too. So, those are my two thoughts after seeing everything we've seen. I hope you loved the video. If so, as I said, please hit the subscribe button because there are more coming. And that's it. Be very happy. See you in the next videos. Bye bye.